Hey now, it's Brace for Impact, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it's still the same. We're talking TNA wrestling, and another newsworthy week for TNA, and a newsworthy show for tonight. Let me get this tweet out here. I'm live now. I'm live now, talking TNA wrestling, talking Steve Maclin. Steve Maclin got the fired briefcase tonight. I unfortunately saw that one coming. I know last week I like my official prediction was Eric Young, but I was like, maybe I was trying to manifest that it wouldn't be Steve, but for like selfish reasons, because obviously I'm a big fan. I'm a big supporter of his. I've been a big fan since the day he stepped into TNA. I did not watch any of his Forgotten Sons stuff. Like I watched NXT at the time, but I just like for whatever reason the Forgotten Sons I forgot. So a swig of coffee for the Forgotten Sons. Um, and he'd come into TNA, and I respected him right off the bat, not just because he's military. And I know that you guys are gonna be like, "Oh, Mike, he's a Marine. That's why you respect him." It's like, no, it's more than that. He'd come into TNA, come into Impact Wrestling during the pandemic after he got shit canned. And unlike Heath, and I got nothing against Heath, right? But Heath came in around the same time, and he wanted everybody to know that he's the guy from the three-man band. He was the one-man rock band. He's doing the same shtick, the same gimmick, everything. And what was cool about Steve is that he had come in and he wanted to reinvent himself. He wanted to let the old Steve Cutler character die. And he wanted to do something new. And I respected that about him because a lot of former WWE stars, and he was on the main roster for a little bit. A lot of former WWE stars, whenever they get released, they they don't have any creativity whatsoever inside of them, and they just spend the rest of their careers being like the artist formerly known as whatever their WWE name is. And Steve wasn't like that. Steve, I, it's at the point now where I like most people don't even remember that he was a forgotten son. And I'm not trying to do like a funny pun, like legit. Like I don't think of Steve as the Steve Cutler from the Forgotten Sons. He's fucking Steve Macklin, the motherfucker that wrestled PCO, defended his world title against PCO in Canada, and was just bleeding like a stuck pig. Like I always tell the joke about Steve is like you can't give a Marine a razor blade because he's just gonna go crazy with it, right? The guy that had the great matches with Nick Nemeth and with Josh Alexander, several with Josh Alexander, had the great matches with Mike Santana, obviously. One of his early matches, and I interviewed him the first time I ever met him. I interviewed him right before his match at Hard to Kill one year before he wrestled Trey Miguel, and then he came out House of Fire in that match, and he looked fantastic. So, former world champion, former TNA International champion, and a hell of a guy. You know, we do got to talk about the elephant in the room, though. Um, a lot of people think that this is a work. I'm not completely there yet. I'm holding out like that's a possibility that it's a work. It could absolutely be a work because this is pro wrestling and nothing's ever real. But I'm telling you guys that I thought it was a real good chance that it was going to be him. I've talked about it openly on social media, and in fact, by earlier today, I was pretty sure, and it's because people in his orbit are trying to send me signals that he's gone. Right? People in his orbit are trying to tell me that he's like at least he's either gone or he's unhappy or both. Um, and if that's the case, then I hope that if he does end up leaving, that he gets to go to AEW, and I think that AEW would take really good care of him. Now you're probably gonna be like Mike, he's probably not gonna be the world champion there. I was like, okay, most people won't be. So Mike, he's gonna be caught in purgatory. He's not gonna do well, you know what? Look, Josh Alexander's on the show. He doesn't wrestle every week, but he's on the show every week. Speedball's on the show every week. And Jake Doyle was like they weren't gonna win the tag titles, but they were looking really good lately. And you're like, oh, Mike, he's gonna get a push and he's gonna put on Ring of Honor. Well, you know what he could do if he went there? He get to be with his friends, Josh Alexander, his wife, Deanna Perrazzo. The Rascals are there, Ace Austin's there, and he's a well-known and well-respected guy throughout the industry. And yeah, maybe they're real top heavy. They got a million wrestlers. They just fucking signed Tommaso Ciampa, and I don't understand why. I like Tommaso Ciampa, but if I'm like Tony Khan, I'm like, you have 200 wrestlers under contract. What are you going to do with Tommaso Ciampa, right? And he'll probably have the same issue with Steve Maclin, you know, and Macklin will have an uphill climb to get himself up that card. But I think that the guy's like super talented, and I think he wrestles a style that they would respect for sure. And I think he wrestles a style that Tony Khan would actually like. I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you that Tony's actually ever seen Steve. And he's a wrestling fanatic, but enough people in that company have, and I think that enough people in that company would, value his abilities and would respect him. And I think that he would do really well there. Um, Joel quit his show earlier. And then whenever Canada decided to put it on an hour early, he's like, okay, well, you know what? I'm back. so now he's had like an hour to sit here to do his show. Now he's harassing us, but he says, wow, Mike, Steve can't win the AEW world title. I can't believe you'd say that. I think he would be a great AEW world champion, but I just look at the landscape there and it's really hard, and it should be hard to break through that ceiling. Not everybody gets a turn. It should be hard to get to that level. It took Swerve a couple years of like doing jobs before he was able to get up to that level, right? MJF was there like pretty quick, but for the most part, it takes a lot to get to that level. But could he, international? Of course, he was TNA international champion. But could he, go for the international title? Could he go for the TNT title? Could he go for one of the other million fucking belts in that company? Of course, right? Could he go to Ring of Honor for a little bit? Yeah, for sure. And people say, "Oh, that's a bad thing." That's not a bad thing. Bandito's the fucking Ring of Honor champion, and he's on TV every week, right? So it's there's a lot that you could do with a Steve Maclin. Now, again, a lot of people think that this might be a work. And I watched the show tonight, and it looked like they were shooting a little bit of an angle. And Mike Santana talking about it on social media and doing the hashtag, all that. But if you were to like put a gun to my head, I'd be like, he's gone. He's gone. And I think he's gone because I just have this feeling. And like I said, people in his orbit, people that know him have been trying to signal to me that he's leaving, and without actually telling me. And I was like, yeah, I've seen the signs for weeks. I've talked about it here, and I've been open about it on social media that I think that he's probably on his way out. And in fact, tonight I took to Twitter and tagged Tony Khan, and I told him to book Josh Alexander and Steve Maclin as a tag team against FTR. They just lost Jake Doyle. He just tore his bicep. Who knows when he's going to come back? So Mark Davis is going to be in limbo for a while, and that poor guy, Mark Davis, he just like he never does anything wrong. He like hurt his back, couldn't get on TV. Finally gets back on TV. They put him in this awesome tag team, and then his tag team partner gets hurt in their first fucking match. So I feel bad for that guy, but it feels like there's an opening for a tag team, and it feels like there's an opening tag team to challenge FTR. Or if they decide to flip the belts back to the Young Bucks, who they're repackaging again, I think that would be a good match too. Like heel Steve and heel Josh against the Young Bucks, beating those fucking nerds up. I would love to see that. I think that would be a great match. So the tag team division in AEW has kind of been down. Like that, like they still have the good matches, but I think that it hasn't been that deep for a while. And they could use a great tag team. And if you're Steve, you take that deal for sure. You got steady mailbox money. You don't need to, get a GoFundMe if you hurt your arm. Like you can afford to live. You have a living wage when you're with AEW, and then of course your wife is there, and she appears to be. There were times where we thought she was unhappy, but she realized she was in the doghouse, and she's working her way out of it. And now she's the women's peer champion in Ring of Honor. So she's, kind of getting back. So Um, we'll see. We'll cover it here every week. You guys know you don't have to twist my arm to talk about Steve Maclin for sure. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, and I just hope the best for the guy. And it sucks, like I was having a back and forth with David Penzer, and he said, I can't remember what he said. Hold on, I got a million notifications on my thing here. I got a million notifications here, but I was having a back and forth with Steve Macklin, or not Steve. I was having a back and forth with David Penzer. He and I have become a little bit friendly. He's a pretty nice guy, and he watches and talks about AEW, or not. He talks about TNA every week, and he says it's tough to match $1 billion for dollar, and these guys deserve to get paid if they can. I can assure you that the entire TNA family loves and respects Steve deeply, and I promise you it was hard to say goodbye. Well, yeah, Tom Hannafin was fucking crying on the air, and I said the new regime doesn't value guys and girls who kept the heart beating through the pandemic, right? And I'm not just saying that to say it. I'm not just saying that looking on the sidelines. I'm saying that because I was told that by people who used to work there. I'm not making that up. Okay. Um, and if I told you guys who told me, you guys are like, okay, that tracks, right? By somebody that used to work there, that was a pretty important guy to this company during the for a long time. And it's just when you get new boss, it's like it's with any major company when you get in new bosses. It's like in any football team, right? Like coach gets fired, new football coach comes in. He didn't draft a quarterback. They're going to want to change the quarterback sometime, unless that quarterback is fucking, Peyton Manning, right? It happens with every football team. It's like I didn't draft these players. We need to get my guys in. And then now you got this guy Carlos who has no guys, and all he knows is TV and TV stars, and that's kind of like if you take a look at who they've been trying to sign lately, with the exception of Bear Bronson, it's just been like TV attractions, TV stars. Hardy's obviously great signing. Nick Nemeth, great signing. But then you take a look at you got Ash by Elegance and you got Cora Jade. Ash does a great job. I think she's valuable to the company. Cora Jade, not so much. I didn't see anything tonight in Cora Jade where I'm just like, and you don't want to do like an either or situations. Like, did they have to like get rid of Steve so they could sign Cora? It's like, no, that's probably not what happens. Like, it's never that easy. Um, and it's never that easy. So Dave's reply said, "Not so fast. When you're on a tight budget, you have to make hard decisions. I assume Steve wanted a raise. Well, yeah, for sure. And you can only pay so many top guys. You can make an argument that Steve should have gotten paid, but sometimes, again, hard decisions need to be made. Do you pay the Hardys and let Jake and Steve walk? Hard choices." And so I guess I responded to him, and I'll just respond here. Jake, it was time, right? They repackaged Jake 15 times. They did not know how to book Jake, and which boggles my mind because Jake is just this big bad muscular motherfucker that growls at people, right? And does cool moves and power slams. Like in my head, like that's an easy guy to book. But these guys are writing a television show. And if you're not funny, you don't sing, you don't dance, and you don't have this crazy personality, like they don't know what to do with you. Right. Because I don't think they just don't understand bad motherfuckers. Boggles my mind. I don't understand, but they have a hard time with folks like that. If you can't speak English and you don't like have this humongous, larger than life personality, they don't know what to do. Right. Like, or if you're not already famous from the WWE, like they don't know what to do with you. So they had a hard time booking Jake, and they had a hard time booking Black Tail Roos and the other luchadors that were there because they couldn't speak English. So but Steve is different to me. Steve is different to me. Like Steve's like Bobby Roode, like he could have been one of your focal points, one of your centerpieces for the company for like a decade. Always in the mix for the world title, wins it every once in a while, like one of those cats. He can work. He's actually a better villain, a better heel than he is a babyface, I think. They had a hard time booking him as a babyface, and I just felt watching him like he didn't seem like that into being a babyface. I don't know if it's like his Marine mentality, but he just like maybe he just like enjoys being a dick more. I don't know, but when he was the champion and he beat PCO and Scott D'Amore was, wrapping that belt around his waist and he's bleeding down. He's got this big shit-eating grin on his face. It's like, this motherfucker's a megastar. This guy's great. And of course they fucking beat him a month later, dickheads. But not that I'm still mad about. I am still mad about that. But I just felt like Steve was different. I just felt like Steve is a priority. So it's like, okay, no, you have to keep the Hardys. I think you have to keep Nemeth. Ash by Elegance. Okay. Everybody else, like Steve's a priority over. I think. And Mike Gilbert would prioritize Steve over Ash by Elegance, but just because I'm a bigger fan. But I don't know. I'm saying all this, and I don't have access to the books. I don't know what the budget is. I don't know what money they have allotted for each slot. I don't know exactly what they're getting for the TV deal. I've heard ad revenue, and then I also heard like they're getting 200K in episodes. I don't know. I don't know what they're getting in merch sales. I don't know any of that information. I just know what I see on television, and what I'm seeing is you got a guy that could have been one of your biggest assets for a decade that could be identifiable with your company that you created. Right. TNA created that Steve Maclin created his own character. Don't get me wrong, but it was made in TNA. And that's what's always going to be identifiable with him. He's going to be a TNA guy for a long time. And you had that. You had it with Josh too. And you let them both go. If Steve ends up leaving, which I think that he will. But I've gone on for almost 20 minutes talking about Steve. And you guys knew this was coming. But if you came here for me to like cry, or if you came here for me to like yell and scream, I'm just not going to do it. Because if he is leaving, I'm happy for him because I think he's going to get paid. Right. And the guy deserves to get paid. He works his fucking ass off. And he's a quality human being. And I'm looking forward to, he's doing a benefit for military coming up in New Jersey. If I lived anywhere near there, I'd be there. But if they decide to bring that shit to Charlotte, I'll show up. I'll set up the ring. I'll ring the bell. I'll mop the floors. I'll do whatever I can to help. But if he does get signed by EW or even WWE, I'm happy for him. But if he comes back to TNA, I'm happy for him. But I'm also happy for the show because I like covering his work.